gentlemen, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. The second episode with Professor Koh Siu Min of the National University of Singapore, and for a lot of international viewers, particularly viewers in America who are tuning in through Lifestyle TV USA, the #1 professional podcast TV in the United States, awarded by the Telly Awards, the authoritative award. And thank you, Dr. Mobi, for being the sponsor of this show. I'd like to introduce Professor Koh to those who are tuning in to the second episode of her show, and this is Your Money, Your Life. And for the first 2 episodes, yesterday and today, we're talking about giving back to the Main Street businesses, the Main Street entrepreneurs who are finding it really struggle in this pandemic as they're struggling to pivot, and they are thinking, whom should I seek help from when the bankers are not there, the bankers shut their door in their faces, and they can't seek help from their neighbors or their families because everybody's on the same lifeline. So we have the wonderful co-host with me, Professor Koh. She is one of the best sought after top corporate trainers of Fortune 500 listed companies in the world, and we're talking about brand names like Citibank, Swiss ABB, which spans throughout the world, and also Mitsui conglomerate, Japanese, and also local companies like Senoko Power and all. And her experience spans over 30 years in the corporate world, plus giving back to students in the academic arena, and all these students that she has groomed that rise from the bottom to the top from her hands. So she's also a mother to these students that she helped to groom, and she's got such wonderful accolades in the schools, from the students, from the university and the schools, and also from her corporate clients. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Professor Koh from Singapore to you. Professor Koh, take it away.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It is also this lady, Vicky, that I should give thanks to for the opportunity. And if you have followed my talk yesterday, part 1, you would have realized that I was concentrating on 3 legs of this 3-legged stool called the financial statement of every company, be it SME or even the MNCs. So as a sequel, you may like to sit back, relax, and take a look at the power of leverage. Because in business, besides having good cash flow so that you can pay as and when your debt is due, you must also squeeze the best out of a deal, not at the expense of anybody else. The businessman will still use their own money and whatever that is available called other people's money, especially in pandemic times like this. We know that in Singapore and many other parts of the world, the governments are giving full support for availing the credit. So I'm going to show you how you can make good use of the availability of other people's money.
Thank you so much, Professor Koh. Let's dive into your beautiful PowerPoint slide, and I'm so impressed that you actually stayed up the whole night just to do this for the audience, to pay it forward to humanity. You know what we're doing right now is really giving them tips and useful tips, not just about saying, okay, we're going to help you, but sometimes help comes in different forms, right, Professor Koh? So without further ado, let's dive into your slides.
Precisely, Vicky. Help can come in useful advice, and I really am enjoying every bit of it since yesterday's part 1, that the little that I can do is really to share. That's all I need to do, because these are the things I not only talk to my clients, the MNCs, the SMEs, the medium-sized companies, and also listed companies on Singapore. It is actually a very simple concept called the power of leverage.
Now, tell us, Professor Koh, I'm all yours, and I'm so excited for your class now. Let's listen to the master class, the master herself.
If you talk to anybody who walks on the street and you ask them, if you have a little bit of capital, as in cash, what would you do? They will say, I would invest in a company. I can run a company. I can buy a share that is listed on the stock exchange. And here we go. They are trying to maximize what I call highest level of return, as in what they get back on the amount that they invest. So in the accounting term, of course, we call it total assets. But to a layman, it's just what is my return on investment? So the investment is actually referring to what I invest in the assets of a company. So I can be a small company or I can be a big company. Now, this company is called Apple. I thought it would be nice to take a glimpse at what a successful company like Apple has done. Now, I have highlighted.
Professor Koh, as an audience, even though I like it so beautifully in your slide number 18, but because the words are quite small, maybe we change it back to the wonderful slide here. Yes, thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Vicky. And for the benefit of those who are viewing this and squinting their eyes, I have already highlighted the two important points. All right. Yeah. When a company makes money and do a business, they are concerned with whether they have sales because that is the source of most cash flow. So Apple has brought in the sales in 2020, ending September, 274 billions. And if you look just all the way down, skip everything until you see what is at the bottom here, it says they made a profit of 57 billion. So this is how a businessman will look at. I've got a good profit margin, but am I getting what I am expecting for the money that I'm investing? So here is what I call the balance sheet. It is one of the three legs in the financial statement. And as usual, we only zoom into the important items. So if you take a look there, it says there 333.88 billion. Well, that is a lot of money. But guess what? Apple has so cleverly made use of other people's money. And you can see this is what I call OPM, other people's money.
Okay,
Who are
before
they?
we go on, Professor Koh, this particular case study was from a company that is quite real, isn't it?
Yes, this is the latest financials, as in an annual financials. Of course, Apple has got quarterly reports.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are really diving into Apple. Okay, this is the real and latest financial statements of Apple. So I know this is something that definitely I will shout out in the marketing to the rest of the world. They should watch Professor Koh's show because we're diving into the financial statements of Apple. Let's continue, Professor Koh.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Vicky. So I'm only going to look at the key points because I don't want to go too complicated until we lose the big picture. So the big picture here for today, we are looking at leverage. The meaning of leverage is if I'm a shareholder of Apple, I'm concerned about my own money. So here's where my own money is. That's called the equity. So my own money is OM. And it's as straightforward as that. As a shareholder of Apple, holding just very, very, very few shares, but I like to see that I am getting a very good return on my money, and that is $65 billion that has been invested into the entire company. So when a layman says, how much do I get back for my money? They will then look at this part here. So the money made, which is 57 billion, I will distribute it among every dollar of shareholders. And you can tell it's quite a lot. The shareholders put in only 65 and they are getting back more than half. So this is how it works. Profit of Apple Inc., like what Vicky said, looking a little bit small. So this is what you have is blown to show you the pertinent. I cut off I truncated the decimal place. So we look at the big picture, 57. The total asset is what the layman calls ROI. What do I get in return for investing in the entire company? And it is not bad. Return on total assets for Apple, as at one of the latest annual report, which is September 26, 2020, is already a whopping 17.6%. Now, as a regular investor for long run, I always feel if I can get anything more than 10% compounded year on year, it has met my minimum standard of requirement. But Apple's doing 17.6. That is really, really awesome. But wait till you see. This is the profit after tax over asset. If I were to look at how much do I get for myself, because I'm one of the shareholders, 65 billion. I could speak. It's 88%. It's really 88%. And that would probably strip off a lot of performance of other stocks. All right. And here is where I like to share with you. It is really not difficult. It brings you back to what we used to do when we were studying physics in your high school. You look at what I call leverage. So here is a simple mathematics. The entire balance sheet has now been summarized in different colors, moving from the pink 333 billion, which is the asset. This is what the company has invested in. Out of which the own money section is only 20% of 323, leaving the balance whereby you have suppliers to Apple, bankers to Apple, maybe Apple issue a bond. All these are people who can't wait to do business with Apple, and that is how you leverage on other people's money. Now, the simple mathematics says, if I put in $1 and I can depend on other people for 4 parts, I now have an asset size 5 parts. And this is really amazing because it really sweeps you off your feet when you look at it and say, why didn't I think as a businessman, albeit small, I could negotiate with my suppliers so that they will grant me the short credit terms, even if it means no other bankers lend the money to me. I have got my network and my spontaneous bankers. They are called the creditors. They are called the accounts payable, i.e. the suppliers. Now, this is not going to look difficult, all right? It can be overcome by looking at this. This is the simplest way of looking at. I would never be able in my dream to own a company which is 323 billion worth in terms of net book value. All I need is to join the rest of the people to put in a seed money of 65 billion. That is the capital, which is my own money. And see, this is what I call financial engineering. It comes from the word engineers, which means ingenious. The concept, the principle of pivoting can also be used here because this fulcrum here is also known as the pivot. By my own effort, no way. But if I borrow a lever, as in leverage, look at how effortless this gentleman is doing it. He borrowed a bigger lever, which is the rest of the money. There you go. 258 from all the supporters, all the business partners in Apple, and they combine this together to have this asset size that is 323. And that is how the power of leverage has uplifted a small business who may only have limited amount, 65,000, 650,000, but they depend on their network to supply them the rest in the form of delayed payment. If you can negotiate for that, then you don't have to fret that the banks are not lending you money. And this is wonderful. You know, Vicky, later on you can test me and you can even do the calculation because the 17.5%, when you multiply by a whopping 5 times, not 1 time, not 2 times, not 3, but 5 times. I call this the multiplier effect. That's how I get my
exactly. You know, Professor Koh, I think you have taught us and showed us in very simple terms. Could you go back to that? Yes. Now, yes, this graph, I think it tells very simply. If number one, this is real because we're talking about Apple here, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone is investing in Apple like a customer. I think we should start buying Apple stocks. Number one, Apple is actually the number one company. And if the number one company, they're flash with cash, my goodness, they're using other people's money. What about small SMEs? Now, it's never shameful to borrow, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes the pride in us say we shouldn't borrow and we shouldn't use the OPM concept. But I think Professor Koh today have actually illustrated it is so powerful, this multiply effect of the OPM. Like where she has shown us Apple Corporation. We're talking about the whole world who is actually a customer buying from them. Instead of investing $1,000 in the handphone, we should be buying $1,000 worth of shares or 10,000. I think per share is already in its hundreds of thousands already. And Professor Koh has actually shown for every $1, if I'm right, Professor, you should borrow from people $4 to leverage so that you have a total of $5 to be working. And it also means that, number one, you delay payments. You ask your customers to pay upfront or even advance payments. Right, and that's why the power of subscription is so powerful. If you think about that, Professor Koh, the power of subscription, people are paying upfront 1 year ahead, even before the goods or the services are actually delivered to you. You think about it, that blows your mind, Professor Koh. That financial engineering that you just said really blows my mind. And we're translating it from a very difficult concept of a huge corporation that this, ladies and gentlemen, is not in theory. It's not a textbook. We're talking about Apple Corporation. And we can, if Apple is so smart, we should always be figuring out why they are so smart. I'm very sure they have paid hundreds and thousands and millions of people as their financial consultants and financial chief operators. So now we have Professor Koh, who is actually demystifying to us the power of OPM. So take it away, the power to Professor Koh. Please continue.
Thank you so much. I think Vicky is just as financially savvy as I am. You know, she was just telling us how they collect money in advance. So these are actually what I call down payment. This is prepaid, you know, by the customers. And therefore it becomes a liability because they are supposed to deliver the inventory, whether it's Apple 12, iPhone 12, or MacBook, or iPhone 13, which could be coming up. So these inventories here, together with all the cash that is parking aside for liquidity, plus the R&D that is spent every year for better and better products, whether it's in a phone, it's in a MacBook, or in terms of services as well. This is really just so successful. So we must take this off to Apple. The whole concept of financial,
Leverage.
yes, leverage. And that's where the name comes from. It's really just a simple lever. And how we leverage on this concept to magnify the return. Imagine, Vicky, if you happen to have $323,000, you could have chopped up this $323,000 into 65,000 each, so that you can invest in 5 different companies. They will all make the 57,000. And that's how the multiplier effect.
Multiply effect.
Yes. is called leverage. Of course, if you are more familiar with the word gearing, it is the same. If I haven't convinced you, I'd like to show you how people used to say, oh, the gearing ratio of this company is something like 4 times, 5 times. Yes, it works like a gear. It works like a clock. The very low 17%, actually 17% is quite high, was magnified to become 88%.
Oh
So
my
this is,
God, my goodness
yeah.
me.
If I could
Wow.
just do this thing called multiply the return on investment from 17.5 by 5 times. So you choose the right year. Do not be too ambitious. And you can always start low. Maybe you gear up twice. And then you got the cash flow. You gear up 3 times. And of course, not everybody have the luxury and the credibility to gear up 5 times. I think for a small, medium enterprise, if you could start with 2 and advance to 3, you are successful.
Wow. So that's the power of leverage and the power of gearing. I mean, this applies to our personal lives we're talking about. I mean, we may not be running or owning the Fortune 500 companies, right? But it's so adaptable to all of us. I mean, it's a tool that we need to know. Professor, thank you so much. For the next 3 minutes to cap this off, Professor, could you continue for the last 3 minutes?
Sure. So after this, watching this, just go ahead and look at any company, all right? Let me tell you who is the master of all leverage and gearing. You could have picked Citibank, you could have picked Bank of America, or you can pick my local bank. One of the best performer is now called Digital Bank of Singapore. It's DBS Group Holding.
Oh wow!
So
this is what we're seeing now, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give them a backdrop. This is a real financial statement of one of Singapore's biggest banks, which is called the Development Bank of Singapore, DBS Group Holdings. And this is the real financial statements dated 31st December 2020. So this is the latest and the newest.
Certainly. If you look at the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, it certainly brought down the bottom line, which I'm going to bring you to. So this is the bottom line. They made a net profit of $4.75 billion. They could have made more because the year before, which is 2019, ending December, it was 6.4, but they maintained. So they did suffer to some extent in terms of the absolute dollar of profit, but lo and behold, look at the amount of assets that DBS owns is by far one of the largest, in terms of assets. We only have 3 banks. This is the biggest. It has reached almost 650 billion, but of course, this is Singapore dollars, all right? And same concept, you're going to be blown away. If Apple has leveraged 5 times, look at how much equity this company has.
How much did they leverage? I'm very interested.
Yes. Out of the entire 650, the equity portion is 55 billion Sing dollars. You can just reach out to your Apple calculator, our smartphone, and there you go. It's 650 billion, of which only 55 billion comes from the shareholders who put their money there.
Wow. So we're talking about the leverage of how many times is that? It's crazy.
It works out to 11.8. Almost 12 times. Almost 12 times.
And I understand some of these biggest banks also seek your advice, Professor Koh. Thank you so much. Wow, and this really blows our mind, Professor Koh. And if you are a small SME and you're struggling, and a lot of small SMEs, we're brought up in Singapore, brought up in this very Eastern Oriental conservative concept that we should have our pride and never ever ask people for money or never ever borrow money. I think we must totally shatter that kind of concept, and instead of that we must really put into the whole central tenet of a business about OPM concept, which is always championed by Robert Kiyosaki in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and so many business gurus out there, financial gurus out there. Wonderful illustration, not just talking about it, but really illustrating Professor Koh from real life and most recent and current examples from the smartest companies. We're talking about Professor Koh.
Yes,
kudos to
this
you.
is just amazing, and despite what is happening economically, the bank was able to leverage on 11.8 times. So, albeit the much shrunken value, they have done well, maybe not as well as the previous year, which was 1%. Can you imagine getting a return on investment of 1%? Doesn't look very attractive to you. But when you own the shares, it is multiplied by 11.8 times.
Wow.
So I still have a decent.
This is
8.6.
crazy, right?
And you're talking about a bank, from an investment point of view, bank is one of the good proxy for diversifying into investment across different industries.
Yeah. I think this really blows our minds, and I think this show, kudos to Professor Koh. Viewers, you must tune in, and listeners, you must tune in, because it will blow your mind if you're going to invest and use your whatever money that is in your piggy bank, that you should break your piggy bank right now and then put the money to good use, right? Investing in companies, in their shares, that will give you good returns, especially in these times whereby, we are all in the pandemic. A lot of times we are not even spending the money in the shops already. We're not going out to the retailers. Our piggy bank is actually growing, right? Putting the coins in the piggy banks, and a lot of money are actually latent there, not working for us at all. Professor Koh, and ladies and gentlemen who are tuning in to the show today, you will actually see, and this is actually just another preview of what's going to come with a powerful show from Professor Koh. Right, Professor Koh?
Yes, thank you, Vicky. I only have one last caveat.
Yes.
During this time when interest rate is very low, it is so appropriate to take advantage, to leverage on the low interest rate. But as the interest rates start climbing up because of inflationary pressure, then you can always tilt back and scale back in terms of the 5 times multiplier effect. We as a businessman is talking about flexibility, reactivity, and being very versatile. And then you can slowly scale back to make sure that you do not over borrow and pay too much interest until it eats up your net profit. That's all I have to share. And thank you so much for this opportunity, Vicky. And for
wow, I'm so excited. You really have blown the mind of people who are viewing this video. Either today or tomorrow, it's going to be there for infinity, right? Professor Koh, and I think we have a job to do. I think the work is just cut out for us, Professor Koh. Whatever knowledge that we have, we should never keep it. We should always share, and that's the job of a teacher, as an educator.
Yes, it should multiply, Vicky. It's going to be multiplier effect.
Yes, and it's a way of paying it forward. And especially at times like this where we're in lockdown, think about how you can leverage your money and also your businesses. Most importantly, if ladies and gentlemen, your businesses are struggling, even if you are a small SME, you are an auto entrepreneur, you are a mom and pop store, you are a sole proprietor for your business, I think it is time to leverage and not be ashamed to go out, because that's the key tenet of a business. You have to use the OPM concept. So to wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, my final word is that this is actually a preview for the shows to come, for Singapore to actually pay it forward to the rest of the humanity. And you can see that we are giving really very simple tips but from real concepts that actually made it so simple for us to understand and digest in our hands and in the words of Professor Koh. Thank you so much, Professor Koh. Another 10 seconds for you to say goodbye.
Thank you so much for this opportunity of sharing it with you. I like the multiplier effect. May you share it with as many people as you can reach out to.
Yes, thank you, Professor Koh. I will tune into your show again next Thursday and Friday with us from Singapore to the rest of the world. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.